The Baki Hanma vs Kengan Ashura anime film is a few months away, and a question on everyone's mind is who is going to fight in this crossover clash. Unfortunately, since it's claimed as a film, the amount of fights could be very limited, and it's very possible that we will only be getting Baki Hanma vs Tokita Ohma. However, as always, we like having some fun, so let's go over the most likely matchups and I guess a perfect world where we got multiple fights. There are some limitations to consider that I'll go over. Firstly, Baki vs Ohma, the main fight that has a lot of potential to give us a lot of cool exchanges. For example, Ohma's advance versus Baki's demon back. We already see Baki unleashing his demon back in the official poster, so this occurring is most likely the case, and seeing Ohma activate his advance in the 2D animation style is going to be pretty cool. I'm imagining they could also have multiple grappling exchanges as well, as if you don't know, Ohma is very proficient at grappling, and we get this demonstrated in the latest trailer for the final season of Kengan Ashura, the Water Kata, which makes up his entire fight against Cosmo. Then when it comes to Baki, even though we don't see it as often, he is a monster of grappling. The original manga, or first manga in the series, was literally called Grappler Baki, and we see him implementing grappling at multiple points. Recently in the anime, we saw him pull this move on Yujiro, which was pretty insane. Various striking clashes with Baki's this regular mixed martial arts against Ohma's Nikko style techniques is going to be pretty cool. There is one thing I don't personally think we're going to see, but if we did, it will be very sick and does make a lot of sense. Ohma's secret or other ultimate technique known as Demon's Bane, which against the demon bag user would be pretty insane. And lastly, Ohma's reaction to Baki pulling out his imagination based dinosaur attacks is going to be pretty interesting, and I wonder how he's going to actually deal with them. Now before I go over the other fights, take note I will be only considering the main Baki fighters in the series, and will only be using the Kengan Ashura fighters, meaning I won't be talking about anyone from Kengan Omega, as they won't be appearing in this film most likely. They haven't appeared in Kengan Ashura, what this film is based on, these characters. So of course, no Shenmue Long vs Yujiro Hanma, which does make the most sense, but we're not going to be able to include it. So the opponent for Jack Hanma, overall there's a lot of options. The most common one is Kure Raian. Raian, at least later in Omega, is very close to the likes of Ohma. You could say they're like brothers to a degree. However, the main reason people want to see this matchup is the pure insanity of both characters. If you didn't know, both are actually my favourite from Baki and Kengan respectively, which is pretty cool. So these two fighting would just be next level. I could also see the likes of Kano Gito. If you're an anime only, right now looking at the anime, Kano is viewed as the big boss in the entire series, and of course has the power to back up that pretty much perspective, which to me means he really just has to fight another top tier. Wakatsuki vs Jack is also something that could happen, a similar dynamic to Waka vs Julius from the previous season. For example, Waka, someone who was born strong, facing Jack who was born weak and had to do everything to gain his power. And then on the other end we could have Jack vs Julius, the two roid abusers, two guys who became monsters. That could be pretty cool. But if I had to place my bets, I'm going to say Jack vs Kure Raian. When it comes to Yujiro, we really only have one option, Kuroki Gensai. If we consider that the author of Kengan has already claimed that he worked on the drafts for the film, and then take his writing in the homage chapter for Baki, he already implemented a comparison between a young Yujiro and a young Kuroki, meaning these two at the very least having an exchange, a talk, a face-off in some way is bound to happen. Kuroki, spoilers, won the Kengan Ashura Annihilation Tournament. Yes, he viewed Kano as an equal and didn't go out of the fight against Ohma with like low difficulty, no injuries, but he won pretty convincingly and demonstrated that he's the top dog at that time. Him facing Yujiro, the top dog of the Baki universe, is pretty much something we're bound to get. I could also see Kure Raian having an interaction just for the sake of him being a demon himself, so that could be pretty cool, but Kuroki is definitely my bet. When it comes to Biscuit Oliver, I either see Julius or Waka, and for this matchup I'm going to say Julius. Pretty much two characters who are in love with their muscles. The ultimate muscle face-off will be pretty cool. And then Waka's fight, I believe, is going to be against Hanayama, or I think this is most likely. Two characters who were born with insane strength. Wakatsuki has his Superman syndrome, Hanayama has his grip strength and is outright being claimed as built different by the likes of Yujiro. The fight between these two would be kinda wacky, as Hanayama, as we know, doesn't really block fights, is this an all-out brawler, but the punches these two could give one another, the Blast Core vs Hanayama's big wind-up punch would be pretty wild. Next we have Doppo Orochi. So him vs Kuroki is a fight that to a lot of people makes more sense, but as I already mentioned, Kuroki will be busy with Yujiro. Therefore, I think Kanagito, perceived as the second strongest in Kengan Ashura, I guess interchangeable with Ohma, but I still at the time believe Kano is stronger, is the one for Doppo, the formless, alongside Kano's vast mastery of various other martial arts as well, would be a good challenge for Doppo Orochi and his karate, with both of them pretty much being legends of their respective underground arenas, Kanagito being I guess the highest winning Fang of all time, and Doppo Orochi of course being considered a legend in his own regard. Goki vs Hatsumi-sen is something just makes perfect sense. The two pretty much Aikido users in their respective stories, so these two swinging each other around doing insane stuff when they touch each other's hands will most likely be occurring. Would be pretty entertaining. I hope we get an interaction between these two, or just a mention of both their technique. When it comes to the opponent for Katsumi Orochi, I'm not actually sure. There's a few options. We could have, for example, Ray, Gao Lang is a possibility, or even Cosmo, as two younger characters who are considered prodigies in their own parts, so I guess Cosmo will be my choice. Let me know down below what you think about that. For Retsu, I'm going to actually place in Gao Lang. Of course, the most common matchup that I've made a video on before is Ali Jr. vs Gao Lang. However, I wouldn't consider Ali Jr. a main fighter in the Baki series. He just had his one arc, and even to this day, like 20 years later when it comes to the Baki manga's serialization, has not returned. Retsu recently in the anime, we got to see his boxing arc, so him facing the boxer of Kengan Ashura would be pretty cool. Shiba vs Segabahashi is a fight I could see happening. Two characters who just aren't about blocking attacks and mad that energy to the max. We could also have Gaia vs Mutaba. Similar vibes in I guess their fighting styles to a degree, or what they come from, not this real martial artist, so that's what makes sense to me. When it comes to Motobe, this is one I'm not too sure about. When it comes to the fighters remaining in Kengan Ashura we could place up against him, we have Ray and I guess Kiryu as other top tiers I haven't placed in a fight, so either of these two, but there isn't really an all-out weapon user, and even when looking at the Baki anime adaptation, we haven't really seen the rise of Motobe yet, that's more later stuff. However, there is one more Baki character I'm going to mention that, if I'm being honest, doesn't really have a matchup in Kengan, that being Pickle. I don't really see who could really fight him, if I'm being honest. If you have a matchup that makes sense, I guess let me know down below, but personally, Pickle, just an outlier, doesn't really have something that makes too much sense to me. I would, however, love to see the Kengan characters' reactions to him. That would be pretty cool. And then that's really all the main anime fighters. We're not going to see later characters from the Baki manga that haven't been animated yet. For example, Masashi Miyamoto, Sukune, or anyone else I haven't really talked about. I don't think we're going to see the prisoners as well. And we're probably not even going to see all these guys I mentioned in the video. Some of them, and maybe some having a clash, but most likely only a few at most. But this is still better than nothing, and I'm still beyond excited. It's also important to note that fighters from both series improve much later on in their respective mangas. For example, in Kengan Omega, Ohma has access to the Kure clan techniques, and then currently in Baki Raian, Jack's new martial art, Gao Dao, the way of the biting. Yes, he does bite in the early days of Baki, however, his fighting style is a little bit different and far more tactical currently rather than back in the past, which is probably the version of Jack we're going to see in this film if we do see him. Before leaving, shout out to these mad lads, the members. You can become one as well and get access to various benefits, which includes additional content. But that's it guys, peace.